This is my second video talking about an Athlon in this channel. Previously I talked about that dual Athlon XP system I own, which is a very cool little system. It's recently had some upgrades and I may be taking a look at it again in the future, but for now, let's have a look at a very mid-range Athlon XP, featuring an Athlon XP 2600 Plus, a gigabyte of DDR memory, and a Geforce 7600 GS.
It has been a massacre.
Some people strive to have the best of a platform, having the fastest processor, the fastest graphics card, the best motherboard, and the best chipset on the motherboard. Well, with most platforms that's a good idea sometimes, but with the AMD Athlon XP platform, I'd argue otherwise. A lot of the high-end motherboards for this platform are very unstable. They either have issues with bad caps now, because they're starting to get on by 15 plus years now, and even once recapped they still have issues with power delivery. Sometimes the chipsets are to blame. For example, the Geforce 2, it's a very flaky chipset. You either have a motherboard that'll work great with it, or you have a motherboard that will barely function and just drag itself along. So that's why this Athlon uses the ASRock K7VM4 motherboard. It's a very cheap, low-budget motherboard. It's nothing great, it runs a VM KM400 chipset, and has onboard Unichrome 3D graphics, which I haven't touched because who the hell uses onboard graphics on systems like this? But either way, I've had no issues with this motherboard so far. I haven't been able to cause a crash, a BSOD, a lockup, nothing. It's been fine. I'm very surprised there's no bad or leaking capacitors on this board, considering I pulled it out of a bag of trash at the flea market, but hey, I guess ASRock actually used good capacitors on this board or something. Maybe. It does support the 333 MHz FSB that this chip needs, this Athlon XP 2600 Plus. It's not a Barton chip, it's Thoroughbred. It runs at 2083 MHz. Don't let that fool you, it's still a very hot running chip. You need a copper core heatsink, a high powered fan, and good case airflow to keep it cool. People say Pentium 4s are space heaters. I could probably toast a marshmallow with this fucking thing. It's a bit picky about what cards it'll work with though, that's the only problem with this board. The PCI slots, most of them work, but this SATA PCI card will only work in the bottom PCI slot for whatever reason, and is much slower than say in other systems, but other than that, it's fine. Video cards are a different story though. This is where I do have a legitimate complaint. I did want to use a Geforce FX 5700 in this system because it would be a very good pair for the processor with that card. Problem is, it does not boot with that in. It just does not complete post. It'll either crash during post or just not even display video at all. And it's like that with every Geforce FX series card around. Everything from the 5200 to the 5950 Ultra. It's a bit odd though, as it will work with the HD 3650, which uses a bridge chip, and same with the HD 3850. And even this Geforce 7600 GS, which uses a bridge chip too, so God knows why it's a problem. The 7600 GS, by the way, came out in 2006, which is much newer than the system. It was only $130 when it came out initially in 2006, and this particular card was bought for £65 back in 2008, so it's not an unrealistic upgrade for a system like this when you think about it. It allows for full DX9 support on the system, which will allow more games to be played, and also allow for hardware decoding of video playback, so HD movies would be playable on this system, without the CPU being a bottleneck. There's only 1 gig of DDR400 memory in here. I could put 2 gigs, but I don't have any other working 1 gig sticks right now outside of the Pentium 4, so... And to be honest, I've not seen a need for more than a gig of RAM in a system like this. You can get away with a gig, maybe even half a gig in a system like this for what games I do run on it. The only thing I can think of that would need more than a gig is Crysis, and that's just a silly thing to run. You realistically can't play that on here, but you can run it. The boot drive is a 160 gig IDE drive, and the storage drive is a 250 gig SATA drive. And the storage drive is connected to that PCI SATA card, like I mentioned. It's not bootable, so you can't like throw an SSD in here or something crazy and boot from that, but the IDE one is, obviously, because it's connected to the IDE control motherboard. But yeah, both of those drives, I got them for free, and they seem pretty alright so far. Still yet to have any check disk errors or anything like that, so that's good. It's a very hot system, mostly because of the CPU. The graphics card does not use much power and doesn't shit out much heat, but the CPU definitely does. Which I'm glad I got that cooler on there with that weird turbine jet cooler thing. Kinda neat actually. You gotta make sure that the power supply using a system like this isn't under spec, as it needs to have a very strong 5V rail. You can't use a modern power supply on a system like this, it doesn't have a strong enough 5V rail. You need somewhere around 30 to 40 amps for an Athlon. I haven't mentioned this yet, but the sound card in this system is just the onboard integrated C-Media AC97 codec. It's crap, but I don't really want to put a dedicated card in this system. But there is one cool feature, is that it has a game port output input on the back of the motherboard, so I can hook up with all the joystick or MIDI hardware. So that's kind of neat actually for a board like this. So let's try out some benchmarks then. 3D Mark 2000 scores 11,002 points. And 3D Mark 2001 scores 11,227 points. Very similar scores. Quite surprised about that. 3D Mark 2003 scores 6,218 points, and 3D Mark 2005 scores 3,070 points. Aqua Mark 3 scores 38,027 points. That's pretty good. All of these scores are pretty damn good on paper. It's much faster than some older Athlon XP systems I've owned in the past. It's definitely much faster than the Athlon MP, even though that had dual processors, just because the single core speed of this chip is much faster than the MP2000 pluses that are in the dual Athlon, so plus the GPU in here is much faster than the FX 5700, so there's also that advantage too. Yeah, let's move on to some game benchmarks now. So then we have Doom 3, and medium settings 800 by 600. We got a result of 46.9 FPS, and at low settings 6W by 480 we also got 46.9 FPS. Same result twice, what the fuck, but that's after running the test twice in a row, which I got the same frame rates both times running those tests, so strange how it landed on exactly the same decimal figure even. So we tried out low settings at 800 by 600 and we got 45.9 FPS, which is lower than the medium settings. So, no clue why that's the case or why this is happening on here, but pretty sure it is a CPU bottleneck. This is kind of how it works when you optimize your game for Intel. Quick for Arena at normal settings, 6W by 480, we got 162 FPS. Slower than some other systems that are technically slower, so I don't know why it's running like that, but it's more than playable. And then we have Crysis. Crysis benchmark CPU 2 gives us a score on average of 60.8 FPS. And the GPU test gives us a score of 20.44 FPS. Of course, Crysis is running at lowest possible settings to get those frame rates. This is where I just run out of games to benchmark on here. Most of the games I have do not have benchmarking features built in, and I don't feel like trying to get MSI Afterburner or Fraps working. All I can really tell you is anything that needs a Pentium 3 to run, or will run well on a Pentium 3, will run 10 times faster on here. Anything that needs a Pentium 4, or runs well on a Pentium 4, will also probably run pretty well on here as well. Compare it to I don't know, a Pentium 4 2GHz, maybe a 2.4, 2.6 GHz chip, and that's somewhere in the ballpark of the performance of this system, honestly. I just want to get Unreal Tournament benchmarking done with UT 2004 using a utility called UMark, but I couldn't get it working with my copy of the game, which, by the way, my copy of the game is a legit boxed copy of the game, so I don't see why it isn't working with it, but it would just crash the second it would try to do any kind of benchmark, so that's a shame. As you can see from the frame rate to see it now, it runs perfectly. It's not 60 FPS when you're playing the assault maps and tons of stuff are in view, but when you're actually just playing deathmatch or on smaller levels that are less outdoory, I guess, or more inside maps and corridors or whatever, perfectly, above 60 FPS, perfectly smooth, and even when it's not smooth, it's still in Real Tournament, it still plays well. Another example of a game that runs really well on here is Dustin Elysian Tale, a game from 2011, 2012, can't remember, but it's a game I remember I couldn't run on my Pentium 4 very well a couple of years ago, until I got a GPU upgrade up to a HD 3650, but meanwhile this system is much slower than that Pentium 4 was, and it's running it 10 times better. It's perfectly smooth, completely playable. So yeah, that's my Athlon XP system. It's the only Athlon XP system I have right now that's running, and it's pretty good. I'm not sure what else to really say about it. It's a computer, it does what I need it to do, it plays games I want, it runs software I need it to. It's fun to play around with, and it also makes for a great space heater in winter. I'm actually legitimately serious about that. I have just simply powered it up and played games on that system specifically just to heat my room up, so yeah, even back in the day it was a very affordable system, and even now you can pick up a system like this for 10-20 bucks on a flea market, and if you want to build custom, go on eBay, you can buy a motherboard for 10-15 bucks, CPU for 10 bucks, you know, DDR memory, you probably have some laying around, and these 7600 GS cards are a little bit more expensive than some of the older ones, but you could substitute this with a Radeon 9600 or a 9700 or really any other sort of card from that era, depending on what type of games you want to play. So yeah, I guess that's it for now. Hopefully I'll get around to making another video soon.
It has been a massacre.